Judging by her bellicose, belligerent speech last night in Chicago, we can assume that President Harris will be an enthusiastic advocate for this and other neocon military adventures. And President Trump says that he will reopen negotiations with President Putin and end the war overnight as soon as he becomes president. This alone would justify my support for his campaign. Last summer, it looked like no candidate was willing to negotiate a quick end to the Ukraine war, to tackle chronic disease epidemic, to protect free speech, our constitutional freedoms, to clean corporate influence out of our government, or to defy the neocons and their agenda of endless military adventurism. But now one of the two candidates has adopted these issues as his own, to the point where he has asked to enlist me in his administration.
Trump.
I'm speaking, of course, of Donald Trump.
Yep.
Less than 2 hours after President Trump narrowly escaped assassination, Callie Means called me on my cell phone. I was then in Las Vegas. Callie is arguably the leading advocate for food safety, for soil regeneration, and for ending the chronic disease epidemic that is destroying America's health and ruining our economy. Callie has exposed the insidious corruption at the FDA, the NIH, the HHS, and the USDA that has caused the epidemic. Callie had been working on and off for my campaign, advising me on those subjects since the beginning. And those subjects have been my primary focus for the last 20 years. I was delighted when Callie told me that day that he had also been advising President Trump. He told me President Trump was anxious to talk to me about chronic disease and other subjects and to explore avenues of cooperation. He asked if I would take a call from the president. President Trump telephoned me a few minutes later, and I met with him the following day. A few weeks later, I met again with President Trump and his family members and close advisors in Florida. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's scheme of rivals. That arrangement would allow us to disagree publicly and privately, and fiercely, if need be, on issues over which we differ, all working together on the existential issues which we are in concordance. I was a ferocious critic of many of the policies during his first administration, and there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. We are aligned with each other on other key issues like ending the forever wars, ending the childhood disease epidemics, securing the border, protecting freedom of speech, unraveling the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies, getting the U.S. intelligence agencies out of the business of propagandizing and censoring and surveilling Americans and interfering with our elections. Following my first discussion with President Trump, I tried unsuccessfully to open similar discussions with Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak to me. Suspending my candidacy is a heart-rending decision for me, but I'm convinced that it's the best hope for ending the Ukraine war and ending the chronic disease epidemic that is eroding our nation's vitality from the inside, and for finally protecting free speech. I feel a moral obligation to use this opportunity to save millions of American children, above all things. In case some of you don't realize how dire the condition is, our children's health and chronic disease in general, I would urge you to view Dr. Carlson's recent interview with Kelly Means and his sister, Dr. Casey Means, who is the top graduate of her class at Stanford Medical School. This is an issue that affects all of us far more directly and urgently than any culture war issue. And all the other issues that we obsess on and that are tearing apart our country. This is the most important issue. Therefore, it has the potential to bring us together. So let me share a little bit about why I believe it's so urgent. Today, we spend more on healthcare than any country on earth, twice what they pay in Europe. And yet, we have the worst health outcomes of any nation on earth. We're about 79
What could be
Oh, I didn't see that. Shoot.
Nicaragua and Mongolia and other countries.
Mongolia.
Nobody
Didn't see the
has a
purple.
disease burden like we have. And
What
during
could be the reason?
COVID epidemic, we had the highest body count of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. And CDC says that's because we are the sickest people on earth. We have the highest chronic disease rate on earth. And the average American
We're in a
who
hog
died
nation.
from COVID had
That's right.
3.8 chronic diseases. So these were people who had immune system collapse, who had mitochondrial dysfunction. And no other country has anything like this.
Hamburger
Two-thirds of American adults and children suffer from chronic health issues. 50 years ago, that number was less than 1%. So we've gone from 1% to 66%. In America, 74% of Americans are now overweight or obese.
Nope.
And 50% of our children. 120 years ago, when somebody was obese,
Here we go.
They were sent to the
No, it's not my friend. It's Robert Kennedy giving a speech.
Almost unknown.
Politics.
And childhood obesity rate was 3% compared to 50%.
Oh shit!
Half of Americans.
Sounds like he's crying or something.
Diabetes or type 2 diabetes. When my uncle was president, I was a boy.
No, his throat just got fucked up. I'm not sure if it was cancer or what, but it was something like that.
One case of diabetes during his entire career.
Or some sort of injury, I can't remember.
Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic, and the mitochondrial disorder that caused diabetes also causing Alzheimer's, which is now classified as diabetes, and it's causing this country more than our military budget every year. There's been an explosion of neurological illnesses that I never saw as a kid. ADD, ADHD.
Yeah, no, that's super new. I think that's like last 3 months.
Narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's, autism. In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500. Now, autism rates of kids are 1 in 36, according to CDC.
No, it's 1 in 3.
1 in every 22 kids in California has autism.
No, it's higher.
This is a crisis that 77% of our kids...
It's actually Asmongold reacting to Robert Kennedy.
...are too disabled to serve in the United States military.
Yeah.
What is happening to our country? And why isn't this in the headlines every single day?
He's cooking,
There's nobody else in the world that is experiencing this.
He's cooking.
Is only happening in America.
Oh,
About
man.
18%. And by the way, you know, there has been no change in diagnosis, which the industry sometimes like to say. There has been no change in screening. This is a change in incidence. In my generation, 70-year-old men, the autism rates are about 1 in 10,000. In my kids' generation, 1 in 34. I'll repeat, in California, 1 in 22. Why are we letting this happen? Why are we allowing this to happen to our children?
No more social
These are the
media.
most precious assets that we have in this country. How can we let this happen?
California, bro.
About 18%
What is going on in California?
of American teens now have fatty liver disease. That's like 1 out of every 5. That disease, when I was a kid, only affected late-stage alcoholics who were elderly.
What he's talking about, not the items.
Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the old. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of teens
I know some.
teens have a mental health diagnosis. And 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 children on SSRIs.
What percentage of streamers are
So
on
what's
Adderall?
causing this suffering? I'll name 2 culprits. First, and the
Big
worst,
Pharma.
is ultra-processed food. About
Social media for
70% of
sure.
American children's
Food,
diet is
poison in
ultra-processed.
food.
That means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily of processed sugar, ultra-processed grains, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists who many of whom formerly worked for the cigarette industry, which purchased all the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed thousands of scientists to figure out new chemicals to make the food more addictive. And these ingredients
MSG and
didn't
shit.
exist 100 years ago. Humans aren't biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but ubiquitous in American processed
he's right about
food.
this.
That's
Yeah,
true.
You're right.
The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine,
Yeah.
in our environment.
I had no idea about this until like 2 years ago.
Pesticides, food additives, pharmaceutical drugs, and toxic waste permeate every cell of our bodies. The assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. To name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen. Young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors.
Oh
Americans'
shit.
puberty rate is now
Sterilization.
at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900.
Oh man.
Our country has
He's
the
going
earliest
there.
puberty rates of any continent on the earth. And no, this isn't because of better nutrition. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen driven, and it now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass poisoning
boys.
all of our children and our adults.
See freeballing, we're gonna tell he got tell
Considering the grievous human cause of this tragic epidemic of chronic disease, it seems almost
If he freeballed this, that'd be
damage
nuts.
it does to our economy. But I'll
Imagine
say
raw dogging
it is
this.
crippling the nation's finances. When my uncle was president, our country spent $0 on chronic disease. Today, government healthcare spending is almost all for chronic disease. And it's double the military budget. And it is the fastest growing budget item in the federal budget. Chronic disease costs more to the economy as a whole, plus at least $4 trillion, 5 times our military budget. And that's a 20% drag on everything we do and everything we aspire to. Poor and minority communities suffer disproportionately. People who worry about DEI or about bigotry of any kind, this dwarfs anything. We are poisoning the poor. We are systematically poisoning
You're right.
minorities across this country.
He's right.
Industry lobbyists have made sure that most of the food stamp lunch program, about
Don't worry about
70%
DEI.
of
We're
food
killing them.
stamps and 70 or 77% of school lunches are processed foods.
Bro, these
There's no
bullet points are
vegetables.
crazy.
There's nothing that you would want to eat. We are just poisoning poor citizens, and that's why they have the highest chronic disease burden of anybody, any demographic in our country, and the highest in the world. The same food industry lobbied to make sure that nearly all agricultural subsidies
I didn't expect this to go
go to
so hard.
commodity crops that are the feedstock of processed food industry.
This is insane.
These policies are destroying small farms, and they're destroying our soils. We give about, I think, 8 times as much in subsidies to tobacco than we do to fruits and vegetables.
What?
It makes no sense.
What?
We want a healthy country.
Hold
The
up.
good news is that we can change our thing. We can change it very, very quickly. America can get healthy again. To do that, we need to do 3 things. First, we need to root out the corruption in our health agencies. Second, we need to change incentives in our healthcare system. And third, we need to inspire Americans to get healthy again. 80% of NIH grants go to people who have conflicts of interest. These are the people virtually everybody who sits, and Joe Biden just appointed a new panel to NIH to decide the food recommendations. And they're all people who are from the industry. They're all people who are from the processed food companies. They're deciding what Americans, here is healthy. And 74% of Americans are obese. The cost, if all of them took their Ozempic prescription, is $3 trillion a year.
$3 trillion.
This is a drug that is made by Novo Nordisk, the biggest company in Europe. It's a Danish company, and the Danish government does not recommend it. It recommends change your diet to treat obesity and exercise.
That's a good one.
And in our country, the recommendation now is for Ozempic to children at age 6.
That's
Novo Nordisk is the biggest company in Europe, and virtually its entire value is based upon its projections of what it's going to sell, because Ozempic is going to sell to America. And we have the food lobbyists have a bill in front of Congress today that is backed by the White House, backed by Vice President Harris and President Biden, to allow this.
He's going to be assassinated for sure.
$3 trillion cost that is going to bankrupt our country. For a fraction of that amount, we could buy organic food for every American family, 3 meals a day, and eliminate diabetes altogether. We're going to bring healthy food back to school lunches. We're going to stop subsidizing the worst foods with our agricultural subsidies. We're going to get toxic chemicals out of our food. We're going to reform the entire food system. And for that, we need new leadership in Washington. Because unfortunately, both the Democrats and the Republican parties are in cahoots with the big food producers, big pharma, and big ag, which are among the DNC's major donors.
Keep soda.
Vice President Harris has expressed no interest in addressing this issue. 4 more years of Democratic rule will complete the consolidation of corporate and neocon power. And our children will be the ones who suffer most. I got involved with chronic disease 20 years ago, not because I chose to or wanted to. It was essentially thrust upon me. It was an issue that should have been central to the environmental movement. I was a central leader at that time. But it was widely ignored by all the institutions, including the NGOs, who should have been protected.
I'm going to get messed up on this one.
Against toxins. It was an orphaned issue.
Let's do this one.
I had a weakness for orphans. I watched generations of children get sicker and sicker. I had 11 siblings, and I had 7 kids myself.
Jesus.
I was conscious of what was happening in their classrooms and to their friends, and I watched these sick kids, these damaged kids.
These fat kids.
In that generation, almost all of them are damaged. And nobody in power seemed to care or to even notice. For 19 years, I prayed every morning that God would put me in a position to end this calamity. The chronic disease crisis was one of the primary reasons for my running for president, along with
we need the strand.
Ukraine war. It's the reason I've made the heart-wrenching decision to suspend my campaign and to support President Trump. This decision is agonizing for me because of the difficulties it causes.
He said it.
My wife and my children and my friends. But I have the certainty that this is what I'm meant to do. And that certainty gives me internal peace, even in storms. If I'm given the chance to fix the chronic disease crisis and reform our food production, I promise that within 2 years, we will watch chronic disease burden lift dramatically. We will make Americans healthy again. Within 4 years,
just fuck my tree up.
We will be stronger, more resilient, more optimistic.
Fucking get rid of them.
I won't fail. Ultimately, the future, however it happens, is in God's hands. In the hands of the American voters and those of President Trump. If President Trump is elected and honors his word, the vast burden of chronic disease that now demoralizes and bankrupts the country will disappear. This is a spiritual journey for me.
Honors his word.
I reached my decision through deep prayer, through hard-nosed logic. I asked myself, what choices must I make maximize my chances to save America's
I
children.
can't move.
Restore national health.
I can't move.
I
Here we go.
felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children and reversed this country's chronic disease epidemic. I'm 70 years old. I may have a decade to be effective. I can't imagine that President Harris would allow me or anyone to solve these dire problems. After 8 years of President Harris, any opportunity for me to fix the problem will be out of my reach forever. President Trump has told me that he wants this to be his legacy. I'm choosing to believe that this time he will follow through. His son, biggest donors, his closest friends, and all support I joining the Trump campaign will be a difficult sacrifice for my wife and children, but worthwhile if there's even a small chance of saving these kids. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. That's why I launched my campaign to unify America. My dad and uncle made such an enduring mark on the character of our nation.
That was a good one.
Not so much because of any
He's had some really good ones on this.
they promoted, but because they were able to inspire profound love for our country and to fortify our sense of ourselves as a national community.
Oh shit! Couldn't
held
move.
together by
I shouldn't have
ideals.
even walked towards
They were able
that.
to put their love into the intentions and hearts of ordinary Americans.
I was almost
And to unify
leveled.
a national populist movement of Americans, blacks and whites, Hispanics, urban, rural Americans, inspired
Oh, we took off a.
affection and love,
We gotta stop taking off these auras.
high hopes, and a culture of kindness that continue to radiate among Americans from their memory. That's the spirit on which I ran my campaign and that I intend to bring into the campaign of President Trump. Instead of vitriol and polarization, I put together the values that unite us, the goals that we could achieve if only we weren't at each other's throats.
Dude, that zone
The
artery.
most
Are you kidding
unifying
me?
theme for all Americans is that we
We weren't
all
down there
love
that
our
long.
children. If we all unite around that issue now,
Didn't we just talk about how they
we
were all
can
fat
finally
though?
give them the protection
Oh, this zone respawns everything.
and the future that they deserve. Thank you all very much.
Man. So, let's go ahead. Let's summarize.
That's not where I parked the car.
RFK. Let's see. No more wars. Put fat people back in circuses.
Fuck.
6-year-olds should not be on Ozempic. I mean, I feel like these are some pretty strong points. I do. I think he's really. I think for a lot of examples, I think he cooked. Now, in my opinion,
Ooh,
no
almost
more
died.
cheating. Yeah, there we go. Right, and healthcare spending, cooking. Yeah. So I think that
What the fuck?
if RFK had the same voice as Charles Dance, the guy who played Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones, he'd probably be the fucking president. The guy is so painful to fucking listen to.
Those harbingers,
that
man, are
I
crazy.
don't think that he's gonna have a chance of like being president, just because having to listen to him makes you feel like you need to clear your throat. Like, and the voice debuff is massive. It is. It's a massive fucking debuff. But I think that some of the stuff that he said was accurate and hurt my throat. No, and I'm just, hey, yo, have you heard Kamala? Yeah, it's a lot better than him. It is. It is. Like, and like, again, I'm the kind of person that I will say the dumbest reason And people will be mad. They'll say, you're dumb. I say, I'm not dumb. I just know that other people are dumb. And you are in denial. That's it. And so that's it. Sounds like he's dying. It does. It does. And so that's the way I see it. That's the way I look at it. Q, let me clear my throat. Yeah, no, it matters. The way you talk and how you act and the way your voice is makes such a big fucking difference. It's insane how big of a fucking difference it is. His voice is just like fucked up because of the way he talks. But I'm saying, like, it's still a debuff. It's still hard to listen to, right? That's really what it is. He used to have normal voice. No, it's fucked, right? It is. It's fucked. And so that's the way it is. But RFK is actually worse than Trump for making shit up, though. He just no, look. I mean, I'm the kind of person that, like, I don't really ever think, like, this is going to be a weird thing with me, and it's something that gets me in a lot of trouble. But I learned this playing video games, is that if I could find a person that
Jesus
I hated for 10
Christ.
reasons, but I liked for one, I would figure out a way to use that one reason and ignore the other 10 until I could gain what I wanted out of that person. So, like, I am conditioned to dealing with people that I disagree with, people that I dislike, people that I might not agree with 95% of what they say, but if there's this thing that I can do, a thing that they can do that's beneficial to me, then I'm gonna do that, you know? Sociopath holy? It's not being a sociopath, it's being reasonable. It's being reasonable, and again, like,
Wait,
if I look at something, my goal is about getting what I want. It's not about the person. I don't think about the person. I'm thinking about the, like, how do I get the thing that I want to have happen? How do I make that happen? That's it. That's the only thing. I'm not thinking about who it is, whose ego it is, who else it helps. Nope. Get the loot. Get the loot. How can I, what do I need to tell? It's like, this is why I never get in arguments at a grocery store. Is like a woman gets mad at me at the grocery store. There's an issue. There's a problem. Food order's wrong. What do I need to tell? What are the words that I need to tell you to make you do what I want you to do? That's it. I'm not thinking about how I feel about it. I'm not thinking about who's right, who's wrong. I'm thinking about how do I get what I want out of this situation in the fastest and easiest way that's as effective as possible. That's it. These are not the droids you're looking for. Right, exactly. And so that's
where is it? There he is.
The outcome matters most. As fast as possible. Yep, that's manipulative behavior, isn't it? Yes, it is.
They know.
It's absolutely. I'm manipulating the outcome in a way that's beneficial to me. That's my primary goal. That's what I want to do. And that is my exact purpose. Yep, you are completely right. Yes, I am. The ends justify the means. Absolutely. And if I have to take an L for it, I'll take an L for it. There have been a lot of times where I've had to do things that I didn't really want to do. I had to deal with things I didn't really want to deal with. But I thought that the outcome of dealing with that was better, and it would cause me less friction in the long run. I've taken plenty of L's for things, but because I think it will be the right decision in the long term. That's it. That's life. Yeah, that's life. And so I think about that with people too. So I can hear somebody say a bunch of dumb shit, and then I hear them say one smart thing, and I say that's a good idea. He's right about that, right? That's it. I don't have an attachment to it, to people. Any recent examples? There's actually a really big recent example that I could use, but I can't use it because it's NDA. But it is it's a reason that caused me to lose upwards of 6 figures. And I thought it would be better for more people, and it would be better for me in the long run because of that decision. And after looking at the outcome of that decision, it was the right decision. It totally solved the problem, and I came out ahead and I won. That's right. It's happened many, many times. And one of the easiest things to do is to allow people to, like, this is the easiest thing to do. To let people's ego win. And it's hard for some people that have an ego. But the moment that you realize and you disconnect yourself from your outcomes, you can be successful. Like, that's it. You make more money hating AOC than accepting their money for it. Game or move? Well, it depends on what happens. You won, but you lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Again, there are, like, I don't think, I only think about how do I get to point Z. I don't think about how to get to point B. Like, how do I get to point B, C, or D? I'm thinking about, like, my end goal and how do I reach my end goal. So I have no problem going backwards sometimes in certain cases because I think that's what's necessary. Sometimes you have to go backwards. Sometimes you have to have L's. Sometimes you have to recalibrate. That's just the way it is. But, like, that doesn't matter because if you're moving towards a goal, then you end up winning no matter what. And that's it. And so, those side quests, well, sometimes you do a side quest. But when you do a side quest, you're not always wasting your time. So again, I could talk about this for a long time and, you know, get after the rest of this. Do you think it could have gone better looking back? No, it couldn't have. There are a lot of situations where I am, in a lot of cases, the only person who can solve a problem. And if I don't solve the problem doesn't get solved. It has to be me. I have to do it.
What do you need?
That's it. And so that's it. And so, like, yeah. And if I have to do that, I have to do that. That's the way it goes. Like, growing up, I was, you know, like, usually I don't have any brothers or sisters, but I have a lot of people that grew up around me that were basically younger brothers, primarily, right? Few girls here and there, but primarily younger brothers. So I've always been having to carry people or help people or do things that maybe I didn't necessarily have to do, but it's like, this is just what you need to do because it's like you've got to, you know, you got to make sure that they're not, you know, falling behind. And so that's it. No one can help you but yourself. Most people, like, I don't really ever, like, there are very few people in my life, you know, it's my dad, maybe like 2 or 3 other people in my life that help me. But the reality is that I don't get help from hardly anybody. Almost nobody helps me. Because they can't help me. Like, and by the way, I get frustrated sometimes. I think to myself, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm always helping people and nobody's ever helping me. That's true. And thank God for that, because imagine being in the opposite position. Thank fucking God. Because the opposite position is not being able to help yourself and relying on other people because you can't do it. So yeah, needing help sucks. It does. Every once in a while I do, but I try to make it as few as possible. But anyway, that's about me. So yeah, when I hear this guy talk about something, I don't think about it the way that other people think about it. I don't see it the way that other people see it. And so people might get mad that I'm saying things in a certain way. I think this is kind of, I'm like not a huge RFK supporter. I'm not a huge hater. I think he says some things I completely agree with. He says some things I don't really agree with. But overall, you know, I can respect W's and I can complain about L's. You know what I mean? Look at this tweet below. CNN. There we go. CNN cut away from RFK's speech as he was explaining how the DNC rigged the primary.
Did the palace coup against President Biden. The same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas.
They're cutting it out.
They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35
We've been
days.
listening to independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
from Phoenix outlining what led him to his quixotic quest for the White House to now dropping out.
Man.
There it is. 80, 84. Oh, you hurt. There's the arena. What else can I listen to while I play? You know what else? You know what else is fun to listen to? I'm probably gonna get all sorts of copyright. Joe Rogan. See if he has any new. If Joe Rogan has any new stuff out. Who's he interviewed since I've last seen him? Andrew Huberman, Luis Elizondo, Jack Symes, Ron Hirschberg, Russell Crowe, Peter. No idea who any of these people are, but it passes the time.
High quality content, editing like a pro, and streaming like a star was.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Mr. Hoover, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. So what were you just saying about dog breeds that, like, we were talking about Carl, like the little bulldog breeds, more Mastiff than Wolf?
Yeah,
So Mastiff is a different thing?
well, so
Don't they all come from wolves?
yeah, they all originate from wolves, but then dog selection has been twofold, mainly for phenotype, like morphology.
Is that?
we call it, and then temperament, right? So there's this chart, might be a little hard to find online, about the dosing of wolf versus mastiff genetics, essentially. And there's a bunch of other things woven into dog genetics. First of all, cool point. Dogs are among, I don't know if they are the most, maybe whales are the most, but they are among the greatest variation in body size within a given species. You think of Chihuahua and Great Dane,
Right.
and it looks like it's dosing of the genes controlling IGF-1. Which makes sense, right? Growth hormone, but
Yeah.
kind of wild, right? Like we got some
Yeah.
big humans and some smaller humans, but
Not like dogs.
Not like dogs. And then
Chihuahuas, and then what
Yeah.
are those enormous shepherd dogs? Those, what are those ones, those insane dogs that used to fight off wolves? What the fuck are those things called? Those gigantic hairy things. You know what I'm talking about? We've talked about them before.
I mean,
They're terrifying looking dogs.
yeah, I mean, just the.
What's it called?
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
What the fuck is that
Right,
thing?
right.
What is that called again?
Glad to see you.
But we've seen it before. Doesn't it say the name of the dog?
Don't drink the water.
Well, find the name of those dogs, because there's Brian Callen knows all this shit.
Right. So I have a colleague at Stanford, Sue McConnell, who.
Jozo dogs? No, that's not it. There's a name for them though. Oh, Tibetan Mastiff.
Tibetan Mastiff.
Yeah, they're really furry and they're like 250 pounds. Look at that puppy. That's 7 weeks old. That's so crazy.
I wonder how many they have in a litter.
How could they have very many?
Yeah, it's got to be just a few.
Poor mama.
Cage map. We need that.
So I have this colleague at Stanford, Sue McConnell. She's won best in
Lava
show
Lake.
at some of the big events for poolies.
Cemetery.
She breeds horses and she's
Marshes,
The
fields.
poolies are the ones that look like rocks
basically
farming
anything.
dogs. You know, their eyes are covered.
Ah.
They're amazing. They're amazing. And she had this chart on her door. I was going to meet with her about something. She handles a lot of undergraduate education at Stanford. And I see this chart, and the chart essentially shows the dosing of kind of the original wolf line genes versus more mastiff heavy genetic background. And there are a lot of breeds on this chart, but it essentially shows up in the following way. The dogs that are more sight and scent right?
Let's go.
Longer snouts,
Actually, let's give her
like a shepherd.
town
Heavy dosing of the wolf
some
genes.
gold.
Then you get to the shorter snout, kind of snub nose like the French bulldog, the English bulldog, and some mastiff breeds, pugs, right? And the amount of wolf in them is like nil to none. And then what's happening?
But wait a minute. But they all start off as wolves.
So they have some genes that relate to the wolf origin lineage, right? But over time they've been bred. For instance, the English bulldog.
Right, but all dogs originally come from wolves.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Even mastiffs.
That's right. That's my understanding. But then, as they were crossbred with different dogs, right? So, for instance, like the English bulldog, that line came from the crossing of essentially pug, that's short snout, right?
No,
But
okay.
with mastiffs or with dogs with heavy mastiff genetic dosing. Why? Well, the idea was the short snout gives them a good lever for holding on to things, right? And the mastiff genes lead to, and we know this for sure, both the droopiness of the face, it also relates to less presence of pain receptors in the front of the body. So if you've ever had a bulldog, you know their feet can be really sensitive, but their face, you can hold onto those jowls. My bulldog Costello would go picking up stuff at the beach, and he'd occasionally get a fish hook in his mouth, and it looked super painful, and he's like, whoa. You know, so not very many pain sensors in the face. They have a disruption or mutation in the gene that controls the elasticity of skin. That's why they have the droopiness. And they are brachycephalic, short snout. That's why they're not very good breathers. And they essentially have sleep apnea. That's why they're
They
okay.
snore like a motherfucker.
They do snore a lot. I can attest.
Like Carl does.
It's crazy. And so what were dogs being selected for? Well, unless you're showing dogs were selected for the kind of work they were capable of doing. Like sheepdogs are great herders, this kind of thing. But when people essentially bred up and crossbred to get the English bulldog or the old English bulldog, which doesn't have as much of a light. So I had an old English bulldog. So whereas the English bulldog is elbows out, so inward rotation, the thing we're all right. The old English bulldog looks like this.
It looks more like a pit bull.
Looks more like a pit bull, and they were originally used for bull baiting, for grabbing onto the nose of the bull, getting the bull super aggressive, and then being able to let go and get called off, and coming back to their protector, and basically that is what was to rile up the bull, right, for bullfighting. So you can still find some of this stuff online.
Dude.
You can find some old descriptions, in some cases even some old videos, but of course now bull baiting with dogs is not allowed, right? Dog fighting, everybody looks down on. But then if you start asking about the toy breeds, what were the toy breeds, quote unquote, designed for, Greg? They were basically designed to sit next to you. Some of them will seek out, with the terrier breeds, will find vermin. I think they'll find rats. They're really good ratters.
Yeah,
actually.
Jack Russells are great.
Jack Russells are great ratters. The West Highland Terriers, the Westies, the Cairn Terriers, they're really great hunters for little things, right? And the amazing thing is that when you start looking at the different breeds, it was basically humans selecting on the basis of mostly behavior and phenotype shape. I'm thinking, oh, I don't want a smaller dog that'll just sit near me. I want a small dog that will like kill rats and sit near me. No, I want a big dog that's going to guard. So you start breeding for pain tolerance. You start breeding for loyalty and aggression. And a guy that I think was on your podcast a long time ago, Sam Sheridan.
Yeah.
Yeah. In A Fighter's Heart, there's a great chapter where he talks about, I think it's dogfighting and cloaking. And he talks about how brutal that sport is, which indeed it is. But he talks about the love between the owner and the dog.
Dude, you cannot move, or you cannot stop.
Reciprocal, one presumes. That the strength of that relationship
It's crazy.
predicts how hard the dog will fight for the owner. And he uses this as kind of a parallel construction for why, you tell me if this is true or not, that many of the fatalities in boxing were the consequence of, sure, 15-round as opposed to 12-round fights, but also when the corner man or the coach was the parent. And so it gets into this very complicated psychology. I actually think that's a really terrific book because I think it speaks to a lot of really interesting aspects of bonding between humans, bonding in that case between animals and humans. Of course, dogfighting, right? I don't know if there's many things that people look down on as much as they look down on dogfighting, but he speaks to the relationship between the dog and the owner as a loving one, which was super surprising. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but I don't.
Well, we got it? No way.
Chart. I don't want to send you on a ridiculous expedition, but if you just say sort of genes, that's a simple one. Okay. This one, the one I'm thinking about, is a vertical one that was in Science magazine or Scientific American. but it's wild. Again, I don't want to send you on an expedition that has us paused, but yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. But it's just, we get a rough understanding of it all.
Yeah, so now when I see like a collie, like I see a collie, I think long snout, so it probably has a better nose than a mastiff breed. You can ask an owner, how good is their vision? Are they a sight hound or a scent hound? And of course they're both. But some dogs, like, I'm really interested now.
There's the cage map that we need.
There's a few campaigns and others about dogs that hunt or go on hunts. And like the coonhound breed is amazing.
Yeah,
I've always wanted a red bone coonhound.
Their ears waft up smell. That's why
I
they're
didn't
so
know
long.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, the reason why they have those long floppy ears is as they're running, their ears are wafting up smell, and it gives them a better sense of the chase.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I read this incredible description of why dog scent and sense of smell is so much better than ours. There's a guy named Noam Sobel who's been on my podcast. He's over in Israel, who claims that human olfaction is just as good as dog olfaction. But how do they outdo us? The frequency of sniffs, and this is really cool. You know those little notches on the side of the nose? Like our nostrils look more or less symmetric.
Mm-hmm.
They have those little notches. They create little vortices for the dogs so that the scents stick around. They're actually getting longer exposure to a scent. So when they're getting something like 10 or 20x the exposure to the scent in the olfactory bulb, and are able to assess both directionality. They can be right nostril, left nostril. They can sense odor plumes to steer in one direction or another. But Noam has done these crazy experiments when he was back at Berkeley, where he had people hands mitted, eyes covered, so they can't sense touch, they can't see, everything's covered, and they can follow a scent of chocolate buried 7 inches below the ground.
What?
Yes,
People
and you can see this. This you can find if you say tracking. Sorry, Jamie, my goal wasn't to come here and send you on these.
These people have a nose like Ari Shafir?
Oh boy.
Or Adrian Brody?
Oh my. If you say kind of Berkeley chocolate tracking Sobel or something like that, it should come up. So he would do these aerial views of these people tracking these scents on the ground, and it turns out people are really good at this. They can track a scent. Yeah, and if you
Sniffers show that humans can track scents and that 2 nostrils are better than 1. Okay.
so if you go images, I think you'll
Chocolate
probably
scent through the grass.
yeah. If you go images, and then I'll lay off.
They were track scents.
If you go to images, and you say Berkeley, just say, there it is. Right, so they compared the tracking of a scent hound, of a bloodhound, to human tracking of a scent buried, in the case of the bloodhound, it wasn't buried.
So that person, would they have a mask on?
Yeah, they got a mask on, their hands are covered with thick gloves, they can only use, the only thing exposed are their nostrils. And but that line, that yellow line is not a line with a bunch of chocolate on it. It's buried below the surface. I always thought it was above, and then when I talked to Noam, he said, no, they buried the chocolate scent. And people were able to track it like a hunting dog tracks.
But how did they bury it if it's grass?
I think they cut it.
No, that was
covered it
close.
up.
Oh.
Kind of. But not really.
So he insists that this thing that you see in all the textbooks, which is that humans have, like
Hello, sir.
1,000th or something of the number of olfactory receptors. That's total bullshit.
Really?
Total bullshit. And in fact, our friend, who by the way wanted me to say hello, Rick Rubin, turned to a good friend of mine who's the chair of neurosurgery of a major medical school department, not Stanford, I promise, and said, what percentage of the things in medical textbooks, okay, this is Rick asking this chair of neurosurgery, okay,
Yeah.
what percentage of things that you find in medical textbooks, basic and advanced, do you think are false based on your understanding of what we actually know now compared to when the textbooks were written? And he said 50%. And then Rick said, and then Rick said, I know, I was wide-eyed too. And then Rick said, and what is the extent of impact on treatment of patients modern day? And his answer was one word: incalculable.
Oh my God. 50%.
50% in currently used medical textbooks, meaning that the literature has been updated with new understanding, new scientific papers, but it has not yet been incorporated into the medical education.
But let me say something, because I know that bears have insane senses of smell that are many times stronger than a bloodhound's, and famously can smell people from 100, 200 yards away. Like, there's got to be levels to it. And I just can't imagine that a bloodhound doesn't have a better sense of smell than a person.
Right. So they absolutely have a better sense of smell in under the definition that they use the same number of receptors differently. In other words, the resolution of your vision and a mouse's vision is dramatically different. The resolution of your vision is very sharp at the fovea towards the center of your eye, and actually towards the periphery. Anyone can see if you wiggle your fingers out here in the periphery, and you can't see any details, right? As you move that forward, you can see. Okay. So, and that's because the density of pixels, so to speak, in the retina is much, much higher near the fovea, near the center, than it is at the periphery. So, what he's saying, what Noam Sobel's laboratory has found, and others have found, is that the number of pixels, the potential for olfactory resolution in humans and in bloodhounds is essentially the same. This is his argument. But the bloodhounds sniff much more, so it's the equivalent of having their eyes open much more, right? So to speak. They have these vortices that are created by the structure of their nose and nostrils, so they have longer exposure. And in the case of the bear, for instance, I don't know how many olfactory receptors they have relative to the human bloodhound, but that the bear is likely spending a lot more time and can pull more air, perhaps. I don't know, but is using the mechanical aspects of the olfactory system differently. In fact, and here's, now I'm recalling the experiment that led to this conclusion that humans have exceptional olfaction, which is that there's a particular compound that when introduced to a swimming pool, people can detect the difference in the smell of the water at a dilution that is outrageously small.
Like skunk spray.
Like skunk spray. Forgive me because I'm not remembering the name of the chemical, but he said you can essentially add a drop of this to a swimming pool, and then people can smell the difference between the water. And so his argument is not that humans are walking around sensing all these smells consciously as well as a bloodhound or as well as a bear, but that we have a tremendous capacity for olfaction that, that the chocolate tracking experiment exemplifies, but it requires some removal of our most dominant sense, vision, and hearing, our second most dominant sense, and in that case, tactile communication as well. And so the idea is that, we have an amazing olfactory apparatus. In fact, he makes the argument, and there's evidence for the fact that as soon as people meet, they've done these experiments, people meet, they shake hands, and the next thing they do, they tend to, within about a minute, they wipe the scent of the other person on their face.
And they don't realize it?
People don't realize this.
They just do it subconsciously?
Yeah. So
your captains, also known as how do you say that? Thiols? Sulfur-containing organic compounds with a strong, unpleasant odor. They're colorless, yellowish, liquid, flammable. Mercaptans are found in nature and in living organisms as a waste product of metabolism and in oil and gas. They're also present in certain foods such as some nuts and cheese and in decaying organic matter in marshes.
Right, so we're probably sensitive to the odors that matter.
That can kill us.
That can kill us. He also has this idea that I think is starting to take hold in real data, that we are constantly sensing our own odor plumes. That we smell ourselves a lot of times per day. That's actually very normal behavior.
Right.
There are all sorts of ways people do that nobody talks about.
Yeah, you check a sniff.
People check their sniff, and it's an indication of hormone status, immune status. When you have babies or puppies, you're looking at is a good poop or a bad poop. You're also paying at people. Some people will smell the poop. I'm not a proponent of that, but we're constantly sensing the scent and taste of, for instance, our partner's saliva, right? Actually, an ex-girlfriend of mine wrote to me recently. I don't know what this question represented, but she said, do you think that when you become unattracted to somebody, the taste of their mouth becomes bad to you, or the other way around?
When you become unattracted?
I guess she might have been dating somebody and maybe it had fallen out of favor, and she was not attracted, and she was sort of noting that, their mouth no longer tasted kind of aversive now as opposed to before.
I bet that's in your mind. I bet you don't like them anymore. Because if you're really in love with someone, you don't even care if they have bad breath. You still want to kiss them.
That's true too.
Because you just love them. You don't care.
That's true too.
Yeah.
That's true too.
Yeah, you don't care if they smell. You don't care. You love them. But if they're gross, and then they smell you like, ugh,
Right.
fucking stinky asshole. This is not as extreme as an elk, but you gotta look at the internal. If
Okay.
you look inside of that and see,
Oh yeah.
because they can wind you from 100 yards away easy.
So see this spongy stuff? I don't know if they can see it on video. There's this spongy stuff there. That's something called the cribriform plate. The cribriform plate is a bunch of Swiss cheese-like thin bone, and the olfactory neurons, which basically sit like right behind the back of your nostrils, they send axons, their little wire-like connections, back into the brain.
Ooh.
And when somebody gets hit hard on the head, that cribriform plate shears it, and that's why people become anosmic. They lose their sense of smell.
Yeah.
Now,
there,
now-
look at that
There it
picture.
is.
Yeah.
Now, what's amazing about the olfactory neurons is that they are among the very few neurons in the human and other mammalian nervous system that regenerates throughout the lifespan. So there's a little area of your hippocampus where there's some neurons that everyone makes a big deal of that frankly don't do a lot to regenerate throughout the lifespan, so-called neurogenesis, new neurons. But the olfactory neurons, even though they're a central nervous system neuron, just like your retinal neuron or your cerebral cortex, they can regenerate throughout the entire lifespan. And they do. Every time somebody takes a head hit or there's some, shearing off of these axons, they regenerate. Now, under conditions like, we saw this a lot during COVID where people complain about loss of smell. We see this when people age. Some people are thinking that loss of smell may be a correlate, not the cause, but obviously, but a correlate of age-related cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's, things like that. There are a few things. Actually, I think I recommended it to a couple of friends of ours. Now, there's very little data on this, but I will say, and I'll catch heat for this, but these days I catch heat anyway, so I don't care. There are good data, in my opinion, small amount of data, but let's call it decent enough data to explore, that alpha lipoic acid at 600 milligrams per day during the time when you're starting to lose your smell might rescue some of that smell.
So if someone's getting COVID and they start to lose their sense of smell,
or any viral infection where they are losing the sense of smell.
What other viral infections cause a loss of sense of smell?
Well, anything that clogs the sinuses, certainly, but there are influenza viruses that do this. Now, I know as we're saying this that some people are saying, in fact, Noam Sobel told me that he felt that the data about alpha lipoic acid were kind of on the weak side, but when people are losing their sense of smell and taste, it's really scary. I mean, it's one of those things where, you kind of feel like so much of pleasure in life, unbeknownst to us, is
the merge especially with food.
Oh, I'll never forget when I got a viral infection and I lost my sense of smell, and I ate a handful of blueberries, which I love, and it just tasted like bags of water. I was like, oh goodness, like I don't. There are worse things in life.
Was it COVID that you lost your smell with?
It was. And I did the smell training, which has also been shown to work because these olfactory neurons. This is amazing. Their survival is activity dependent. They require electrical activity driven by sniffing and smelling. It is true that the behavioral tool of taking a lemon and really just like getting it close to that nostril and just really trying to get whatever little whiff of lemon you can, and then taking, your coffee and getting that little whiff of coffee, whatever little remnants of smell that you can get in there, has been shown to improve the survival and eventually the durability of not just the olfactory neurons, but scent. In other words, the behavioral training works. The alpha lipoic acid thing is debated. The thing about alpha lipoic acid is diabetics and people with blood sugar issues probably shouldn't take it. They can kind of reduce blood sugar a little bit. But when I had that happen, lost my sense of smell, I was like, listen, I want my smell back. So I took 600 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid, and I was doing the scent training. I was like sniffing lemon, sniffing coffee, sniffing Parmesan cheese, sniffing anything that was pungent that I could recognize. And my smell came back in a couple of days, but then again, I don't know because I didn't run the control experiment.
Right.
Whether or not it would have come back anyway.
Is it only positive smells, or what about if you use smelling salts or something like really intense?
Ooh, the smelling salts I've never used.
Well, guess what?
Do we have some?
Got some right here.
I'd be willing to try. I think, are they legal before I do something illegal?
100%,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, these are totally legal.
All right, I'll give it a shot.
These are the one. This is
Jamie's laughing.
This is Juju Mufu, who is a real athletic freak. I don't know him, but shout out to him because this is the strongest shit we have ever tried.
I will just.
This one's sealed too.
Okay, I'll just try a little bit.
Oh, you're gonna get all up in there. Come on.
This is like the cold plunge.
This is.
I got a funny story about the cold plunge to tell you later, but that relates to you. But
We'll get to that
yeah,
in a
we'll get to-
moment, but
yeah.
you're about to get your mind blown here, son. So this stuff is so strong that it's sealed in this.
And when somebody gets hit hard on the head, that cribriform blade shears it, and that's why people become anosmic. They lose their sense of smell.
Yeah.
Now,
There,
now-
look at that
There it
picture.
is.
Yeah.
Now, what's amazing about the olfactory nerve?
Now, again, this is totally legal. Only positive smells, or what about if you use smelling salts or something like really intense?
Ooh, well, smelling salts I've never used, but
Uh-oh.
but
Well, guess what?
do we have some?
We've got some right here.
I'd be
Give it a
willing to
shot.
try. I think, are they legal before I do something illegal?
100%,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, these are totally legal.
All right, I'll give it a shot.
These are the one. This is
Jamie's laughing.
This is Juju Mufu, who is a real athletic freak who uses these. I don't know him, but shout out to him.
Okay.
This is the strongest shit we have ever tried.
I will just.
This one's sealed too. So
Okay,
this
I'll
is
just
a-
do a. I'll just try a little bit.
Oh, you're gonna get all up in there. Come on.
This is like the cold plunge.
This is.
I got a funny story about the cold plunge to tell you later, but that relates to you. But
We'll get to
yeah,
that in a
we'll get to-
moment, but
yeah.
you're about to get your mind blown here, son. So this stuff is so strong that it's sealed in this bag.
wait, is it gonna kill my olfactory nerve?
No, you'll be fine. It's so strong that even though it's sealed in this bag, I have to rip this bag open. And,
Oh my.
goddamn, my hands are slippery. Okay. It's so strong that I've broken the seal of this bag just slightly. Look, it's still kind of sealed.
Yeah.
Look, you could smell it through the bag.
Well, let's
Give a
try the
sniff.
gnome
Just give a
supplement.
sniff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
yeah.
Okay. This bag is still sealed. I haven't even cut the bag yet.
So as somebody who had a laboratory with chemicals in it for a long time, now we run clinical trials on humans, but so no more chemicals in my lab.
Okay,
But
now take a sniff.
You
It's
learn
still
to
sealed.
waft it. You learn
The
to
bottle. The
oh,
bottle
oh,
is
it's not
sealed.
even out of the
No. Oh, yeah. The bottle's still sealed. Oh, this is just the beginning.
You know when you go to a
Kids-
park and you go into a public bathroom at a
His hands
park
are
that has a
shaking. He's
pool?
getting nervous.
Yeah, I'm getting nervous. You know, I'm no Elon Musk, but I saw what happens when people do substances on
Oh,
this.
look, that was legal in the state of California, and I think everybody's getting a little out of hand. Yeah, you got trouble.
You're like, we're down here in Texas, so.
Okay, now again, totally legal. Now, what you're gonna do here?
Isn't it amazing that the word legal, when said fast, sounds like illegal?
Yeah, legal.
And then you go, wait, what did you say?
Illegal. It's totally legal.
And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
All right, so what do I do?
Unscrew the cap.
Oh, look, it's my initials.
Unscrew the cap.
All right.
Put it about 6 inches from your nose. Take a big sniff. Get in there.
All right.
Oh, yeah, baby. Let's go. Now imagine if you had COVID.
Wait, hold on. Let me just kind of experience that for a second.
Yeah, take it in. I'm gonna have to
Well,
get
you know what's
some of that
interesting?
too, or it wouldn't be fair.
You know what's interesting?
Oh, the fresh ones are so
I can
powerful.
feel it in my eye because the sinuses run.
Oh, now would imagine if you had COVID. You can smell it over there, huh? I imagine if you had COVID, you lost your sense of smell. Like this might be the key to getting it back.
As long as it's not killing olfactory smell.
I don't think it's killing it. You can smell everything after it. I mean,
That's true.
my own. I'm obviously biased
So
because I like that thrill for whatever reason. We have them in the
I
green
actually
room.
enjoyed that. Thank you.
We have them in the green room at the mothership.
You prompted me to take several new experiences that we can talk about. But one other thing before I forget. I know I go down these like nerdy rabbit holes here, but when I did the smelling salts, I sniffed with both nostrils, but it came in mainly through my left.
Right.
And so I asked Gnome Sobel, what's the deal with this left nostril, right nostril stuff? You know, you have the yogis, the switching of the nostril things. Here's what's wild. This is so wild. It turns out that every 2 hours or so, the dominant breathing nostril switches. Now, now that could be interesting or that could not be interesting, right? There are a lot of things in biology that happen, but like, what is the meaning? Turns out it's a direct reflection of a shift in your so-called autonomic nervous system from parasympathetic dominant to sympathetic dominant, meaning from more relaxed to more alert. And this is happening periodically throughout the day like a seesaw and during sleep. So this whole thing with the yogis of, breathe through one nostril or the other nostril, look, the olfactory bulbs, there's a lot of crossing over of information at later stages and even some early stages once the information gets to the brain. So that whole thing is probably a little bit like weak sauce, but this idea that your breathing easier through one nostril or the other is reflecting an underlying brain state and body state. That is absolutely true.
Wow.
And the last thing is, you said, why would bears or bloodhounds have such better smell? Well, in the case of a bear, the size of the olfactory bulb and the amount of brain real estate devoted to processing that information is much more. So we have a huge visual cortex. Most of our brain, frankly, is devoted to vision and to movement. Whereas, the brain of like a turtle, it's mostly movement. They have very little cerebral cortex. That's not the best example. But certainly in a scent hound, the olfactory bulbs are much bigger than they are in a sight hound. And both of those have olfactory bulbs that are much, much bigger than Jamie's bulldog over there. Those guys sniff all the time, but they're mostly snorting, trying to get scents in. Their sense of smell is much, much worse than Marshall's, than your dog. Because Marshall's a retriever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because he can smell his ball. Like, if I throw his ball and he misses it, he just starts doing a circle, and then he finds it with his smell, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Smells his ball, you know?
Yeah, incredible. So what Noam is saying is not that humans have smell that is as good, but that when you push the conditions, you can reveal a heightened sense of smell that most people don't think humans have. Now, as I say this, there are a lot of people out there, and it's usually women who are like, oh no, I can smell everything. I can smell the subtlest difference. And so it may be something related to maternal behavior. It might be something related to estrogen. It might be something in the Y chromosome that suppresses that. We don't know. But some people are very olfactory. They can smell when somebody's not feeling right or when they're not feeling right.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely the case that we're constantly taking the chemicals off other people through shaking hands, through hugging, rubbing them on ourselves, analyzing our own smells unconsciously.
I always say that I can smell bullshit.
You probably can.
But I don't know if I really can smell it, but when someone's lying, I feel like there's a smell.
There could be the stress. It could be a certain, we talk about stress as one thing, but stress is the dosing of different levels of cortisol, epinephrine. People that are pathological liars, they can probably do it without evoking those things. Then you have things like pupil size. Bigger the pupils, more arousal, right? The more stressed somebody is. We know this, right? That's why, like, if somebody takes a stimulant, their pupils would get huge.
There's a thing that people do when they're full of shit where they're anticipating your response in a different way. Like when someone's telling the truth, like if you tell me the truth, you seem relaxed to my response. Like you're telling, even if it's something that you're not proud of, you're telling me the truth. This is the thing. When someone's lying, it's almost like they're waiting to see how you buy it.
So it's like their defenses are up. They counterpunch quick.
They're selling it. They say it, and I'm like, what? Like you feel does he buy it? I'm like, you're full of shit.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Let me think about this. So you are able to sense their anticipation of your response. It's like they've got queued up some evaluating whether you're going yes, no, or maybe.
Yeah, but it's not reliable. Like I just to be completely honest, I've been bullshitted before, but I think I'm better at it than most, and I think maybe that's because I've had more conversations with people than most people have. But it's not 100%. Sometimes people are full of shit and you're not sure, or you have your defenses down.
I mean, I've been badly manipulated before.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it
especially if you like someone. That's part of the problem. You don't want them to be full of shit.
Yeah, and some of the best manipulators, certainly in my experience, are people that have really figured out the combination lock of the things that that I have felt deprived of, and they come in and and those tend to be unique things, right, that you can't get out anywhere. And boy, somebody said that to me recently. Like there are certain categories of humans that I can't be seduced by. I'm not talking about just sexual seduction, right? But, I'm saying that it just can't be seduced by. And then some people that just are able to get past that force field. And so I consider myself pretty good at threat sensing, except in that domain, where like my threat sensing is like the equivalent of a stuffed animal.
My friend Tony always says that erotic and psychotic are so close to each other that, like it crosses over back and forth. And I think there's something to that too, that some of the craziest people are also some of the sexiest people for some weird reason. Like you want to be with them even though you know they're dangerous, like they're crazy. Like there's some weird thing going on there. Almost like you want wild kids, because wild kids could survive better.
That's an interesting one.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that listening to a really good book that a really smart person suggested to me called 5 Types of People That Will Ruin Your Life. And I only wish I had read it years ago. And here's the main takeaway, that there are about 10% of people out there, and it cuts across all the standard labels of like narcissist and borderline and all that. Like they include some of that, but they depart from that, and they just focus on what. This is a guy who's a psychologist. It's written by a guy who's a psychologist. He's worked a lot on conflict resolution over the years, courtroom type stuff, etc. And he says in this 10% of people, they are high conflict people, but within, they like conflict. They feed off it. They like drama. They like conflict. They like creating it. But within that category, it's pretty evenly divided, he claims, between women and men. And then there's a further division where about half of them play passive and victim, but are highly manipulative. They use other people to try and basically harm.
Yeah.
And then the other 5% are very like aggressive and abrasive. And so he has this great set of protocols, I love protocols, that are essentially like, don't move in with, marry, or get engaged to, or have a child with somebody in the first year. And this cuts in both directions. Just don't make that agreement in year one. As well as for any behavior that kind of cues those senses, gets your spidey senses up like you were describing, ask yourself, would 90% or more of people do that behavior? And if it's a no, like, you have to pause. In other words, what he's saying in this book is that most people are actually pretty healthy, but that most of the woes of the world are created by about 10% of people, which he calls these high conflict people. But they don't always come out high conflict like screaming and yelling. They're often very tactical and manipulative and very vindictive. They'll leverage victimhood. They'll leverage a lot of different things. And again, cuts across men and women equally, he claims. And again, I don't know the data behind this book, but the book itself just feels like a very useful thing that everybody should know about. So I'm enjoying reading this book, going, oh my God, I wish I had this book years ago. Plus, I'm realizing, like, oh yeah, like, we always hear this, like, most of our problems come from a very small set of people and things.
And most of society's problems.
And so who are these people? So we tend to call them narcissists or sociopaths or psycho, but those labels, while very useful in the clinic, I think have been overused in the general public. And like, we're not clinicians. We're not diagnosing anybody. And so, but difficult people that can ruin your life abound, but it turns out it's only about 10%. So, and it has some very specific protocols of how to deal with the people who are more outwardly aggressive, etc. Very useful book. I think it's,
It sucks that you have to think that way, though. Can you just enjoy someone? Enjoy their company?
If they're in the 90%.
Yeah, but that's the problem.
But
you could zig when you should have zagged. And you run into a 10%er.
Take a year.
Yeah, a year is a long time. No.
Yeah.
Also, people can learn like what you tolerate and don't tolerate and hide certain types of behavior from you.
Yes.
Yeah. Which could be a real issue.
Oh, I've definitely experienced that, and it's and again, I think we are often. I mean, you mentioned the relationship between erotic, and manipulative, and crazy, or just erotic and crazy. I think there's also that when we finally receive the sorts of, I don't know, love or affection, it's not always sex, it's not always sexual, right?
Right.
Like somebody like, I don't know, like rubbing your feet or paying a little extra attention to what you say or something. And for some people, that's intoxicating.
A lot of it is paying attention to you. A lot of it is like listening to what you have to say or asking you questions about your thoughts and your feelings, which a lot of people are unaccustomed to. And that's intoxicating to people. Because a lot of people just want to talk about themselves. So when someone wants to talk about you and really is asking questions about your feelings, that can
was unexpected.
In a weird way.
Yeah, it almost feels like a parental type of care that we're probably wired to look for. I mean, I always marvel at this and also just kind of shake my head and go, why? Why did God design us this way? But, the circuitry in our brain that creates infant-child attachment is the same circuitry that is repurposed for all other relationships in adulthood. It's not like you get your childhood attachment stuff and then you go, okay, well, you're like 15, 16, you're moving on in the world, you're hitting puberty, you're starting to date a bit, whatever. Now let's like work with a different set of mechanics, a different set of algorithms. No, it's the same set of algorithms repurposed. We know this based on the studies of infant-parent attachment and on the basis for infant caretaker. and on the basis of studies of romantic love. It's the same circuitry. So you're using a set of algorithms and circuitry that were designed for one thing in a very different context.
That's interesting, and it's probably makes sense why a lot of men with like very overbearing mothers
Come on now.
seek overbearing wives. Yeah.
Yeah,
The ancient Egyptians understood that they could use sound to reduce their weight and the
you know, I've learned so much recently about just how it is that, you know, we can lose our vision of like other people, right? Like and I think this thing that we hear, like manipulation, it often sounds really I think the really tricky part about it is I do think that most people in the world are just like doing their best to feel safe, to get their needs met. I think there are very few evil people.
Right.
But in this sort of pattern of repurposing childhood attachment patterns and then people bringing that forward into their adult attachment patterns, I think what ends up happening is that, you know, people, quote unquote, trying to get their needs met, oftentimes like the worst ones, like sometimes it's called trauma bonding, but they kind of go lock and key. Or somebody identifies somebody that's really healthy and they're like, that, I'm going to latch onto them because like their health is, and you say, well, the healthy person should be able to spot all the landmines. But if somebody's able to really tap into like something you didn't have or something that just feels like oxygen, right? Goodness gracious, like you could be the smartest, most, you know, well acclimated person with the best parents or whatever upbringing, which most people aren't, but you know, some people do have that, and still fall kind of, you know, into this fog that is like, gosh, like you want to be with this person, but it doesn't feel good, you know, that mishmash. And I think the thing I've learned clearly is that when you feel that trepidation, run, don't run. Like it's not like the gray zone is actually the thing to just exit fast. Gray doesn't mean like hover and check it out and like run some experiments here.
A ticking bomb.
Get out. Yeah, exactly.
Run.
Just run.
Yeah.
Just run.
It's also, I think there's some people that are very sheltered and they've been well taken care of and they're not accustomed to manipulative people and they're not accustomed to dangerous people. And so they don't know. I've seen that before, both with people choosing the wrong friends and people choosing the wrong partners.
Yeah, that certainly hasn't been my pattern. Not that I had the hardest upbringing, but it was easy. I always say easier than some, harder than others. But I always had great friends, great friendships. But my threat sensing, it wasn't always great in romantic relationships, for sure. I've also had some great relationships. I think what tends to happen is that if we're very busy, we have this tendency to be easily manipulated by certain things that are unusual, that really feel like extra oxygen to us, or just feel so nourishing. And because I think people always, or will often default to sex, like it's all about sex. Depending on who you are, like sex is either more or less readily available to you, right? Like I think that for some people it's nurturing, like to a certain form of nurturing. And then there's also this thing of we know how to survive certain things so they don't feel as dangerous. So people who've had like very, overbearing or complicated childhoods or abusive childhoods, sometimes they're set to perceive danger at way too high a threshold. Right? So their perception of what's dangerous is like way too high, and so they walk into even still dangerous situations, but they don't think of them as dangerous, and they're like, oh, I can navigate this. They're good at navigating difficult people, or they're good at navigating, borderline people or something like that.
I think it's also exciting, which is part of the problem, is that people like excitement. And if you have a boring life and a life that doesn't have a lot of stimulation in it, and then you find someone, even if they're bad for you, but they're exciting, there's some conflict, something. There's fights and breakups and then makeups, which are exciting, and so then you get locked into this stimulation pattern, or I've seen that multiple times with people. It's a real problem.
Do you think it's more of a problem with people that like excitement and adventure and are super curious, but like excitement and adventure? So I'm thinking comics, I'm thinking people who like high intensity sports, that they seek relationships that are higher intensity, because I've received great advice from people like Rick, who've said, your relationship should be a sanctuary. That should be where peace is. And actually I don't pay a lot of attention to Instagram kind of little mottos and things, but someone sent me one that I was like, yes, that was so true. which is that men eventually settle where they feel peace.
Yeah, I think that's probably the healthiest way to do it. But I think people like I said, I think people like stimulation. And I don't think a lot of people are stimulated by their day-to-day existence. I think they're bored. I think a lot of people are just like trudging along every day. And then when someone comes along that makes you excited in your life, you know, where someone is just a little wilder, a little crazier, maybe some lady's got a bunch of tattoos, like look at her, you know, like, ooh, you know, people get excited by people that are a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it's this idea that anything could like anything could happen. They could do anything.
They're risky people, you know. Someone's got tattoos on their hands. Like Jesus, what is she doing?
Yeah, you and I both have a lot of tattoos, but I've intentionally kept it off the hands and neck and face.
I thought about doing my hands, but it's face. Like that's black. But I have a lot of friends. Like Jelly Roll's a good friend of mine. He's got tattoos all over his face. Post Malone, good friend of mine.
I think if you're a musician,
he's got a bunch of written shit all over his face.
Oh no.
The nicest people. The thing about like Jelly Roll and Post is like once you talk to them, once you're talking to them, you don't see the tattoos anymore. You just see the human. You know, and it's just like them wearing a shirt. It's like it's nothing. You know, it's normal.
And things have changed a lot. Like I was born in '75, right? So heading towards 50 quick.
Back then, tattoos on the face was crazy.
Oh, yeah. One of my childhood heroes, and somehow by grace of God, he's become a close friend of mine, Tim Armstrong, the singer from Rancid. He has a tattoo of a spider web on his head and a spider on his neck. And I remember seeing him when I was a kid at a show, and you're like, that dude's scary. And Lars Fredrickson from Rancid says skunks on his forehead. They're super nice guys. I mean, they're...
Travis Barker's a super nice guy.
Yeah, Tim and Travis do the transplants. Yeah, Tim and Travis do transplants. And, like, you see those guys, and you're like, whoa, but now I think it's shifted a little bit. Yeah. But back then, I remember thinking, like, that's gnarly. That's a tough guy.
Yeah.
You know, and certainly Lars is a tough guy. Tim, too. But I remember seeing it like you only saw it on bikers and, like, gnarly punk rockers.
That is
people
insane.
that checked out of society completely.
A mohawk used to be you're not getting a job.
Right. Yeah.
A nose ring used to. Remember when a nose ring or an eyebrow ring covered? You go into Starbucks and the person would have it covered up.
Let's go.
You know, like because they weren't allowed to have it.
Right.
Now I see medical students with eyebrow rings and nose rings and stuff. So things have definitely.
Yeah, we're a little bit more open-minded. Decorations, but it is a thing though that you're taking a giant ass chance by tattooing your hands.
Well, a friend of mine who's admittedly is a psychologist said, you know, tattoos are largely an expression of what you feel on the inside, on the outside. And I was like, that sounds good. Yeah, it's sort of. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just art. I like art. I like art on my walls. I like art on my arms. I like art.
There's some Rogan tattoos out there. I saw Lex Friedman's face.
There's a bunch of Lex Friedman face tattoos.
He just had a birthday. Oh, you did too. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
And Lex, happy birthday.
Yeah, there's a lot of. That's the weirdest one. Tattoos of people's faces on your body forever. And I don't know how many of them are me. There's thousands of them. I mean, I used to post them on Instagram all the time, but then I thought I was encouraging people to get my face tattooed so that they can. So I'd put it up on my Instagram, but it's kind of crazy.
There might be some reward loop circuitry going on there.
100%. But before I forget this, can I ask you this? Yep. The people that are into this smelling salt stuff, they're power lifters, and they take a big sniff of that stuff before they lift weights. Why would that help them? Adrenaline.
So, a couple of more things about olfaction. By the way, I love this stuff. This is so wild because it's the most primitive part of our brain and nervous system. We were chemical sensors before we were light sensors, right? We were sensing chemical environments. Is this a safe chemical environment?
Right.
And we evolved from that.
Right.
We know that, for instance, memories that are associated with smell, like the smell of my grandmother's kitchen, somebody's hands, my grandfather's hands, that those memories stick with us longer because the olfactory bulb has a direct line to a couple of structures in the brain. So we have an olfactory bulb, which is the main thing for smell. Then there's something called the accessory olfactory bulb. It sort of divides into primitive smells that are like aversive, get away quick. Those tend to go through a really fast line. The accessory olfactory bulb takes us straight to the amygdala, to the piriform cortex that says, move your body and face away from that. Like I didn't sit there and on the smelling salts like, boom, get away. It's like a reflex. It's like in fish, there's this thing called the Mauldiner neuron. where you touch on one side of the body, was the fish go through opposite direction. Big, huge neuron, hardwired circuit.
Well, they have those lateral lines that detect
Exactly.
sounds and things and vibrations in the water.
They're sensing, electrosensing at a distance, and these Maunder neurons are incredible. You touch, boom, the fish heads the opposite direction. It doesn't go like, oh, are you another friendly fish? You want to mate? They go,
Right.
I'm out of here. Oh, and then they check you out.
Right.
And it's a reflex for safety. The olfactory system has these two pathways. The olfactory bulb for kind of like, oh, black rifle coffee, you know, and then there's the smelling salt one that goes through the accessory olfactory bulb straight to the amygdala, which is associated with threat detection and other things, straight to the piriform cortex, and then to a motor circuit. Boom, turn the head the other way, get out, exhale, don't inhale more. Aversive, okay? So the thing about smell is that, you know, it's got these very hardwired components, okay? And they're set up for either appetitive, like, let me explore
I don't
more,
have the
see if I know it,
item.
versus as opposed to aversive behaviors, like get me the hell away. And these brain areas are among the more ancient brain areas. Now, when I say ancient, people nowadays start picking apart at like, well, it's not just limbic and cortex. Cortex is part of limbic. That's all true. But if you look at our brains and you look at the brains of a turtle or even a snake, all the stuff we're talking about right here are all, they're not exactly the same, but they're all present. When you get to humans, what you really add is a lot of cerebral cortex for the thinking and association stuff. Like, you know, I've been here before, so I'm a little bit less looking around as much as I did last time. Like things that, you know, not context-dependent stuff. Whereas all the highly reflexive stuff,
Nona passage.
hardwired circuitry you find in
Two.
every animal, every person, and you need to divide things into three different responses, okay, in order to survive. Yum. I'm going to move toward it.
Oh,
Yup,
shit.
I'm going to move away. And nah. There's basically only three motor responses to anything.
Go to
yup,
passage.
Now there's a
Go.
matter of degrees. Like you might see somebody you really like, you want to Joey Diaz. You see him, you want to run over, you see him, right? So there's an appetitive circuit moves you towards it. See something that's a little odd, you
Damn
might
it.
pause. I don't know what that is, or something aversive, like something happens in the parking lot, and you're like, I'm getting the hell out of here. So the brain, as complex as it is, needs to divide things into one of three different motor responses: forward, pause, or retreat. Okay, I was playing with Jimmy's dog out there. It was like, I couldn't get him to back up. It's kind of cool about the bulldog.
Right.
You charge him, and he just goes, I'm like 20 times his size. But he's just like,
Well, he's also never experienced anybody being mean to him.
Yeah,
So
how could you?
except a few dogs,
Yeah.
apparently. But most of his experiences are play. Like he knows he can just run up to you and bite you, and you play with him.
right. So you said about why the
Yeah.
smelling salts and adrenaline. So here's the deal. When we have this aversive response, the move away, the yuck response, get me away, there's a parallel response in the brain and body of the release of epinephrine, adrenaline. It's the same thing. Sorry for the dual naming.
Epinephrine and adrenaline are the same thing.
Same thing. Long, complicated, boring history as to why it's named two things. Noradrenaline, norepinephrine, same. So let's just call it adrenaline for the sake of simplicity. Adrenaline is released from the adrenals in the body, and it's released from an area in the brain called the locus ceruleus, which sends out a
Holy
bunch of little
crap.
wires, axons, to sprinkler the brain with adrenaline. And both systems work in parallel. So when you smell something aversive, it goes inhale, ugh. Okay, certain olfactory neurons cue that to the accessory olfactory bulb, bam, straight to the amygdala. Amygdala sends a signal, brah, down to the adrenals atop the kidneys. They release adrenaline. Sends believe it or not, a signal up to locus ceruleus. It sprinklers the brain with adrenaline. And you just had, within a couple hundred milliseconds, you just got a parallel adrenaline response in brain and body that allows you to do what more easily? Move. Now you're ready for motion. You're ready for movement. In fact, I'm sure if you put that under the deepest sleeper's nose, in the middle of the night, they're going to wake up like a gunshot wound.
They used to give it to boxers when they got hurt in the corner, give them smelling salts and wake them up.
Yeah, because one of the best painkillers is adrenaline.
That
Because
makes
you've been
sense.
hit hard before. Isn't it amazing how little it hurts when it happens and how much it hurts later?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It's crazy. I mean,
That's the thing that's weird about fights. Like while they're happening, your shins are getting battered, things are getting hurt, and you don't really feel much
adrenaline.
unless you get kicked hard in the body. The liver shots, doesn't matter how much adrenaline you have pumping. There's something about getting hit in the liver. The liver, when you get hit like right here, if you get kicked or punched right here, It's a crazy feeling. It just shuts everything off. It's real weird. Your body just shuts off.
I've seen these and it looks like they take a few paces and they're like ready to counter punch or something, and then it hits slowly. I don't know.
Well, some shots go away. So like some pain, like if you get punched in the gut and you're tightening up in anticipation, it still hurts. It hurts. But then you move a little bit and then you're okay again. But the liver is the opposite. The liver, you get hit and then there's this like sharp pain and a delay, and then everything just shuts off. It's very hard to fake and that you're fine and move away. You see like telltale signs. Like one thing guys will do all the time when they get hit in the liver, they drop their right arm down and they pin it to their body. So maybe they're fighting like this, they're moving, they whack in the liver, and you see them do like that, and they're still moving, but they can't help it. They have their arm because they know one more shot there and they're fucked. But so they barely can keep a poker face and move around, but there's telltale signs that you see that are just instinctive. You see them just drop their hand. And a lot of times guys will use that to set them up with a head kick. So like they'll hit you a good example of that is Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski. He hit him with a left kick to the body multiple times in that fight, and then fired off one to the head and knocked him out.
So it's like they're just hiding this. It's like slow,
you see
deep
the
pain.
leg come up, and it's very hard to recognize. There's a kick called a question mark kick, and it's called a question mark kick because in Taekwondo, we used to call it a fake front kick roundhouse kick. And what it is you're lifting the knee up as if you're kicking to the body in a straight line, and then you whip it over and go like that and turn it to a roundhouse kick. Pull up Glaube Feitosa. Glaube Feitosa was the best at it, so much so that a lot of people started calling it the Brazilian kick, because this guy was a K1 champion who had the most flexible hips and the craziest question mark kick. And he would literally bring it up and down over the guard. So your hands would be up this, like you think your hands are protecting your head. He would bring it up around like this and drop it down on your head and knock people out. Crazy. It's so wild, because to this day, I don't know anybody who can kick as good as him with that kick. Like to this day, he has the best highlight. There's a lot of people that are really good at that kick. But Glaube had a very unusual flexibility of his hips. Watch this. Look at this. Well, that's just a regular one, but he's got some of them that go over the. This is some of his highlights. Look at that. See how he does that? See how it just goes up and around?
It almost looks like his knee just kind of.
Yeah, watch this. Watch this. He's going to do it in slow motion. Watch the whip of it. Look at that. That's so crazy. So you don't even know it's. Look how he just whip it down. And it's just. There's a lot of people that are good with that, but he was the best at it. I mean, the best. It was just weird to see how he could do it.
I'm always amazed how people can kick standing so closely.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, Glaube was. It's just flexibility of the hips. It's leg dexterity. But the way he could do it, man, it's just the finest question mark kick of all time. I mean, here's knocking out Semi Schilt, who is 7 feet tall with it. I mean, it was bizarre to watch that kind of flexibility, and also bizarre that no one else seems to have really kind of captured that technique as well as he did. And Glaube used to fight. I mean, this was like K1. There's Israel Adesanya had a really good one too. He still has a really good one. Look at this one. Wow. But that's a little bit more straightforward. I mean, that's like straight to the chin, and it's a beautiful kick. But the way Glaube used to do it, it would go over the top and down. See that? Like, that is so crazy.
Amazing.
I can't do that. I've been throwing kicks my whole life. I can't throw it like that.
I'm always watching their eyes, and these fighters' eyes. It's amazing to me. Like years ago, I saw a Mayweather fight, and it was obviously on pay-per-view, and he was just getting paid for sure, right? That was his thing. But it was always amazing me in the slow-mo, like where he would slip punches by like centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think that like his depth perception and the depth perception of successful fighters must just be exquisite. Because, I mean, like slipping at that distance with just a chin movement.
That's one thing, but it's also pattern recognition. You've been doing it so many times, and you know. So really good fighters, one of the things that you see is they don't just charge out in the first round. The first round is like a feeling out process. So you're downloading a lot of data points. You're downloading foot movement, and a lot of guys watch tape and they download it from that, but then you don't really know until you're in there with a person. So they're downloading positions. They're downloading what a guy does. Like if you pivot to the left, does he move forward? Does he move back? Does he throw the left hook? Does he throw the right hand? What does he do? And how good is he at closing distance? Does he try to fire from where he's at, or does he skip forward and fire? Does he give any telltale signs? Does he telegraph? So there's a lot of things that a fighter looks for. Mayweather had some of the best counterpunchers in the history of the fucking sport. He was so good at like staying in the pocket. So he was an elusive guy. Yeah,
Or
insane.
there's he slipping.
Pattern
right?
recognition. Pattern recognition. So he knows that left hook is coming. And so look how straight he throws that right hand. See how straight he threw that? So Canelo is throwing these big wide punches, and Floyd is just cutting him off.
So we need lava
legs,
legs. So like,
moving his head out of the line of those hooks.
I need to do
that
like
come
tier
his way.
ones.
So, do you think it's conscious? You know, I'm obsessed with this notion of unconscious genius. Like, you know, like different domains of super high performance where the people don't exactly know how they do it, but they do it.
Well,
And-
you know how you do it, but you've also done it so many times in the gym and in fights that it's second nature, so you're not thinking of it as you're doing it. One of the things about countering people is, I used to, when I was in my prime, when I was fighting all the time, I would throw kicks and they would land before I even knew I was going to do it. Because someone would do something, and as they would do something, I instinctively knew, because of pattern recognition, there's going to be an opening. Like, say, if some guy lifts his left leg, if he's standing with his left leg forward, and he lifts his left leg, and he's coming towards me with his left leg, I know that he's balancing on that right leg, and that the left leg is coming this way, and if I spin...
We're going for the
catch
lava
him,
map. We got to get a
I can
lava map.
catch him
Make it
as his
magic
momentum is going this way, and I'll
because
catch him that way,
we're
and it'll double
missing
the
a few
power of the
things.
punch or the kick. And
Did
so-
somebody teach it to you? Because there's like a conscious awareness of how you do it. Yeah, so I think this notion of pattern recognition, it's interesting because earlier we were talking about pattern recognition for finding people who are lying, right? You have this pattern recognition thing that, you know, you're not saying it's perfect, but like you can sense something. There's things that, and so it's a combination of things that we aren't always aware of. That's the unconscious part of the unconscious genius thing I'm referring to. And so there's this idea like our brains are pattern recognition prediction machines. And so do you think, like, in other words, two questions. Do you think Mayweather was ever pulled aside and said, listen, pay attention to their left shoulder and keep your eye on his right eye? I'm just
100%.
Okay.
100%.
And were you ever told, hey, if his left leg comes up, that means he's balancing on his right, so you need to prepare a counterattack or an attack? So
Well, that's where drills come in. Okay, so you do drills, and you do drills constantly. And one of the things that Mayweather's father was a great fighter. Mayweather's father fought Sugar Ray Leonard back in the 1970s when Sugar Ray was in his prime and gave him a hell of a fight. And his brother, or his uncle rather, his uncle Roger, was Roger Mayweather, the Black Mamba. He was a great fighter. So he grew up as a child around some of the best boxers in the world. And so he was constantly seeing the successful motions that they did and constantly seeing them exploit weaknesses in other fighters and then constantly sparring. So in sparring, you're not just fighting when you're sparring, but you're sort of downloading data. You're downloading data points for a real fight. And then you're doing drills.
But I died.
Where a guy will, you know, some guys, they'll do it with mitts. Well, they'll throw a hand at you and they'll slip and counter. Here, let me show you this. This is guy Ilia Topuria, and Ilia Topuria is one of the absolute best fighters in the world. He's the current UFC featherweight champion, and the dude is just fucking phenomenal. But when one of the things that's phenomenal about him is his technique. His technique is perfect. There's like no fat in his technique. There's no wasted movement. So when an opportunity presents itself, everything is so fast because the technique is so streamlined. But like, look at how he hits the pads. When you watch how he hits the pads, and Mayweather is a great example of that as well. Did I send it? No? Didn't go through? I totally sent it. Hold on. It says I sent it. No, yeah, it's on Instagram. I sent it to you, though, in a text message. Really? I sent it twice. You got it? Okay. Ilia Topuria, like I said, some of the best hands in the sport, current UFC featherweight champion, and knocked out Volkanovski, who was maybe the greatest of all time. Watch him hit the punches. Look at this. See how he's moving his head when the guy throws punches? Just slipping, just slightly.
It's like total economy of movement.
And the speed, man. The fucking speed of that. Look at the hand. Look at the hand speed. Fucking incredible.
Oh shit.
I mean, if you know how difficult that is to do and do it that fast, give me that sound again. Let me hear this. I mean, these are like 5-6 punches a second.
Yeah, it almost sounds like, it almost looks like it's sped up by
Right.
1.5 times, 1.75.
But it's not. And just phenomenal technique. But see how those punches, like, they're not even talking. So when he's throwing the mitts at his head to get him to duck, there's no communication. He just sees that hand coming towards him and he's ducking. He sees this hand coming towards him and he's ducking. It's all like slight slips away, and it's slight motions, which is all you need to get away from a punch, right? You don't want to move too far. You're wasting a lot of energy and you can't counterattack. One of the best things about Floyd, and one of the most brilliant things about him, he's one of the most elusive fighters of all time, but he didn't move around. He stood right in front of you and you couldn't fucking hit him. That's true mastery of space and true mastery of technique. He's in my opinion, he's the best boxer that's ever lived.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not qualified to rank people, but I watched when he was making that ascent towards it. It ended up being 50, you know.
He just fought last weekend. This weekend, yeah, he fought a match against John Gotti's grandson, which is crazy.
That's scary for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. Right. This is the second time they fought. The first time they fought, it ended in a brawl. Like a bunch of people jumped in the ring. It was crazy because they stopped the fight because they were talking too much shit to each other and holding on to each other too much. So the referee stopped the fight for whatever reason, I don't know. And in this fight was even crazy too because the first referee was terrible. And the referee said Floyd Mayweather hit him behind the head. Absolutely incorrect call. Floyd threw a right hand and it caught him on the side of the head, and the referee claimed that it was behind the head. So Floyd fired the referee in the middle of the bout. He stops the bout. He's like, get the fuck out of here. Get out of here.
Because he's the promoter also.
Well, I guess. I mean, also, it's Floyd Mayweather. Like, what's the referee going to do? Fuck you? You know, I'm going to stop the fight? Like, and also, they're in Mexico City. Like, you could get killed. Like, just get out of the ring, buddy. So Floyd throws this punch, and he's 100% correct. The punch landed at the side of the head. It's a right hook. It's a perfect punch. And the referee was saying, watch the back of the head. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? That wasn't the back of the head. And so he kicks the guy out. And they bring in a different referee who finishes the fight. It was insanity.
And Floyd won.
It was an exhibition. It's kind of a bullshit money grab, honestly. So this is, you see the punch? That's the punch right there. It's just a right hook. So he's saying back of the head. Like, so Floyd's like, get the fuck out of here. Just get out of here. Fuck you, get out of here. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And if anybody's qualified to say get out of here, it's fucking Floyd Mayweather, the best boxer of all time. He's 100% correct. That referee made a giant, stupid error. He's like, get out of here. Get out of here. He's like, get out of the fucking ring.
This is his thing.
Yeah, and he's right. Everybody watching it is right. No one thinks it's a bad punch. Let's see it again. We can see it one more time. It's a counter right hand. Let's do it. We can see it in slow motion. So he throws the punch. Boom. It's just a perfect right hook. It's a perfect right hook. What it does is a punch that goes over the top of the guard and catches him in an exposed area of the head. It's a perfect punch. And for the referee to interfere there, and also it's literally like someone who probably doesn't know how to box at all telling the greatest boxer of all time that what he's doing is wrong, which is just bananas.
That's crazy.
So he got rid of the guy in the middle of the fight. But he's still doing these bouts at 46 years old, still boxing these young kids. Again, this John Gotti III, who is a very good up-and-coming MMA fighter. So, you know, he has all the weapons, takedowns, submissions, kicks, all that jazz. But he's choosing to fight Floyd in a boxing fight just for money, just like Conor McGregor did. It's really a trick. He gets these people to box with him. They have no business boxing with him, and he's making millions and millions of dollars doing this way after his competitive career is over. Which is,
because he's earned that right.
Hey, man, he's a genius. He really is a genius. He's a genius in figuring out a way to keep making money. And one of the reasons why people watch him fight is not because he's like Mike Tyson, just goes out and destroys people. They like watching him fight because they hate him. Because he talks so much shit, and he's like, look at my $1 million watch, look at my fucking jet, look at my house, look at this. He's like constantly showing you all these things that he has Like, he'll lay out watches in a hotel bed. Like, this is $1 million worth of watches. This watch goes for $2 million. And they're like, this is my small watch that I take sometimes, but when I'll show you, when I'll show up, I bring out the big boy, and it brings out this watch that's covered in diamonds. It's like fucking $5 million. And so you hate him. People hate him.
He creates envy.
Yes. Yeah, he creates envy, and you want him to lose, but he's not gonna. He's not gonna. He's so good. But the other thing is discipline, right? He's not just this cocky guy who's like really good at boxing. He also has incredible discipline.
I've seen clips of him running in the middle of the night.
Yeah, he would go to a nightclub with everybody else.
About an hour and 45 minutes in, I think we're going to call out for a bit. I'm going to get some food. I'm going to let my dogs out. And then might get back on. Might get back on a little later. We'll see. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you have not. Stay tuned for more. We'll see you.